John lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood with his 8-year-old son, Leo. After years of serving as a Navy SEAL, he had finally retired and wanted nothing more than a peaceful life. Their small house had a white picket fence, a small garden full of flowers, and a garage where John spent hours building model ships with Leo. The boy loved helping, carefully painting the tiny sails while John guided him with patience. Every evening, they followed the same routine. After dinner, they would sit in the living room. John read stories aloud while Leo listened, his eyes wide with wonder. After the stories, they played board games or worked on small projects. Life had a steady rhythm, calm and predictable. One sunny morning, John noticed a letter in their mailbox with an unfamiliar logo and formal lettering. He frowned. Most official mail came from the city or the bank. This letter, however, was from the neighborhood's homeowners association, or HOA. John had never paid much attention to the HOA rules before, as they had always seemed harmless. But the moment he opened the letter, a cold feeling ran down his spine. The letter claimed that John was violating certain community bylaws and that immediate action was required. It mentioned fines, penalties, and even the possibility of Leo being removed from his care. The language was harsh and full of confusing legal words. John read it carefully, trying to understand exactly what the HOA wanted. He quickly realized that much of it did not make sense. The rules they cited were either outdated or did not exist. John felt a mix of anger and concern. Someone was threatening his son using fake rules. He knew this required careful handling. He decided not to confront them in anger. Instead, he would investigate quietly, like he had done on missions in his past. The first step was to visit the HOA office. It was a small building on the corner of the street, usually quiet and empty. John parked his car and walked inside. The receptionist looked nervous when she saw him. Her hands trembled slightly as she handed him a stack of papers. "Are you here about the letter?" she asked quietly. "Yes," John replied calmly. "I need to verify these documents." She nodded but did not look him in the eye. The papers seemed poorly organized, some pages photocopied multiple times, with stamps that looked fake. John examined everything carefully. There were names, signatures, and official seals, but something felt off. He asked a few questions about how the bylaws were enforced and why Leo was mentioned. The receptionist avoided direct answers, mumbling about rules and procedures. John could tell she was scared. That confirmed his suspicion, this was not a normal HOA. Returning home, John decided to observe the neighborhood closely. He installed small cameras around the house, disguised as ordinary garden decorations. He also checked entry points, doors, windows, and fences. Everything needed to be secure. John knew that if the HOA was threatening his family, they might try to follow through. That evening, John spoke to Leo about the letter in a careful way. "Leo," he said, "sometimes people try to scare others using rules that are not real. But we will be safe. We will stay calm, and we will watch carefully." Leo nodded, trusting his father completely. He did not fully understand the danger, but he knew that John would protect him. John smiled and turned the conversation into a game. He taught Leo how to notice unusual things and how to stay in safe spots if needed. It was a game for Leo, but for John, it was training his son to be aware without fear. The next day, John began speaking to neighbors. He approached Mrs. Patel, an elderly woman who lived next door. "Have you received anything from the HOA?" he asked. Mrs. Patel shook her head. "Nothing yet. But I heard some people talking about strange letters." They seem scared. He also spoke to Mr. Lopez across the street. We got a letter yesterday, Mr. Lopez said quietly. They threatened fines for things we didn't even do. John realized this was bigger than just his family. A group was targeting residents, using fake authority to intimidate them. They used confusion and fear to try to control people. John's mind raced. In the Navy, he had faced enemies who were clever and dangerous. These people might not be trained, but their methods could cause real harm if left unchecked. That evening, John walked the perimeter of his property. The sun was setting, painting the sky in orange and pink. He checked the fences, doors, and windows. Everything was secure, but his instincts told him to remain alert. Some of the intruders had already begun scouting, testing for weaknesses. He also prepared emergency supplies. Flashlights, first aid kits, water, and food were placed in easy-to-reach locations. He thought about every possible scenario and ensured that Leo had a safe room, a place where he could stay calm and protected while John handled any threat. When night fell, John sat with Leo on the living room floor, building a model ship together. "Do you see how we make the sails strong?" John asked. "Strong sails keep the ship safe in storms. We need strong plans to keep ourselves safe too." Leo laughed. "Our ship will never sink, Dad." John smiled. The child's innocence and trust gave him strength. He knew that protecting Leo was more than just physical safety, it was also keeping him calm, confident, and unafraid. As John finished tucking Leo into bed, he reviewed the letter one last time. He made notes, highlighted key points, and began planning his next steps. He would gather more information about this fake HOA. He would ensure that no harm came to Leo. And if the people behind this dared to act against his family, he would be ready. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet, but John's eyes stayed alert. He knew that danger often came disguised as something harmless. A letter, a rule, or a paper could be a weapon in the wrong hands. But John had faced far worse in his life. He would not let anyone threaten his family with lies and intimidation. With the house secure and Leo asleep, John felt a sense of determination. This was the beginning of a challenge, but he was prepared. As a Navy SEAL, he had trained for situations where every second counted, and every decision mattered. This was different, it was personal, but the principles remained the same. John whispered quietly to himself, "We will face this together. And no one will take what is ours." The first signs of trouble had arrived, but John was ready. He would protect Leo, expose the fake HOA, and restore peace to their lives. The morning sun rose over the quiet neighborhood. Birds chirped, and a gentle breeze moved through the trees. John was already awake, his mind focused. The letter from the fake HOA still weighed heavily on him, but he knew anger would not solve anything. He needed information. Knowledge was power, and power meant safety for Leo. John started his day with a walk around the neighborhood. He moved calmly, observing every detail. A man in a dark car lingered near the entrance of the street. John noticed immediately. His military training allowed him to see things others might miss, the way the car rolled slowly, the slight hesitation of the driver, the repeated glances toward the houses. John made a note of the license plate and the time. He approached a few neighbors casually, asking about unusual activity. Some were hesitant, afraid of retaliation. Others had already seen strange things. Mrs. Patel, the elderly woman next door, whispered, "I saw someone looking into our windows last night. I thought it was a trick of the shadows, but now I am not sure." John nodded. "Thank you, Mrs. Patel. We will make sure everyone stays safe. He visited Mr. Lopez across the street. Anything strange happened to you lately? John asked. Mr. Lopez lowered his voice. Yes, a man came yesterday, claimed to be from the HOA. He said my house was not up to code and hinted about fines. I refused to sign anything. He left, but I am worried. John listened carefully, asking questions about the man's appearance, his behavior, and the documents he carried. Every detail mattered. He thanked Mr. Lopez and continued his walk. Back at his house, John reviewed the surveillance cameras he had set up the night before. The footage revealed shadows moving near the fence at odd hours. Some were clearly testing the gates and locks. Others simply watched from a distance. It was clear that the fake HOA had more than words, they had people ready to act. John decided to increase security. He reinforced the doors and windows, checked the locks, and set up motion detectors in hidden locations around the yard. He created multiple safe routes for him and Leo to move within the house if needed. Every room had a backup plan. Every door and window was accounted for. John also spent time explaining the situation to Leo in a careful way. He wanted to make sure the boy understood the importance of awareness without fear. Leo, John said, sometimes people use rules to scare others. But we will stay calm and watch. Our house is safe. You are safe. Leo nodded, trusting his father completely. John turned the lesson into a game. Let's play the lookout game, he said. They walked quietly through the house, checking doors, windows, and corners. Leo loved the game, and John loved seeing his son confident and alert. Later that afternoon, John decided to investigate the HOA itself. He visited the local city office to verify the association's records. The clerk looked through files carefully. There is no record of this HOA having authority to take children or enforce these rules, the clerk said. These papers are fake. Whoever sent them is trying to scare people. John felt a mixture of relief and anger. Relief because the law was on his side. Anger because someone had dared to threaten his son. He took copies of the city records for his files and returned home. He also talked to neighbors about forming a watch group. We need to stay alert, John said. If someone tries to scare us, we should know about it. No one can act alone. Some neighbors hesitated, afraid of retaliation, but others agreed. Slowly, a small network of people committed to looking out for one another was forming. That evening, John prepared for the worst-case scenario. He ran drills with Leo, showing him how to stay hidden, how to call for help, and how to remain calm under pressure. Leo followed instructions carefully, proud of his role in the family's safety. John made sure that every emergency item, food, water, flashlights, and first aid was ready. As darkness fell, John noticed another shadow moving near their driveway. A man, dressed in black, seemed to be testing the perimeter. John stayed hidden, observing silently. He noted the intruder's movements, patterns, and weaknesses. There was no need to confront him yet. The first step was intelligence, understanding who they were dealing with. John also thought about the bigger picture. The fake HOA was trying to control people with fear, using laws that didn't exist. Their goal was intimidation, not justice. If left unchecked, they could target more families. John knew he had to act, but carefully. One wrong move could put Leo in danger. Late at night, John reviewed his plans again. He created a map of his house and the surrounding area, marking safe spots, escape routes, and camera locations. He also reviewed his equipment, phones, radios, and flashlights were fully charged. Every detail mattered. Preparation was the key to safety. Despite the tension, John tried to maintain a sense of normal life for Leo. They worked on the model ship together, laughed at small mistakes, and shared a meal. John wanted Leo to feel secure, to know that his father was in control. The boy did not need to carry the burden of fear. John would shoulder it for him. Before bed, John spent a few moments looking out the window at the quiet street. The sun had set, and the neighborhood seemed calm. But John knew better. Danger often hides behind calm appearances. He whispered to himself, "We will be ready. No one will scare us. No one will take what is ours." He tucked Leo into bed, making sure the boy felt safe. Then, he returned to his office, studying every piece of information he had gathered. The fake HOA was organized enough to cause fear, but they were not trained. John's skills gave him an advantage. He could use intelligence, observation, and strategy to stay one step ahead. As he finally sat down to rest, John knew that this was only the beginning. The threats would not stop, and the fake HOA would likely try again. But John was ready. He had gathered knowledge, strengthened defenses, and prepared Leo. They were no longer just targets, they were a family prepared to protect itself. Outside, the neighborhood lay quiet under the moonlight. John knew that soon, the real test would come. But he was ready to face it. He had the skills, the training, and the determination to ensure that no one could harm Leo. The first phase, gathering intel and preparing, was complete. Now, he had to wait, watch, and plan the next move. John turned off the lights, but he did not sleep. His mind ran through scenarios, anticipating every possibility. The night was long, but he felt a sense of calm. Preparation brought confidence, and confidence brought strength. Whatever the fake HOA tried next, John knew he and Leo would be ready. The morning was calm, with sunlight spilling over the quiet neighborhood. Birds chirped in the trees, and the streets were empty. John walked through his yard, inspecting the cameras and checking the locks. Every detail mattered. He knew the fake HOA was still active, and he could not take any chances. The previous week of observation had revealed a pattern. The intruders watched houses from a distance in the early morning and late evening. They seemed to coordinate their actions, testing doors and gates, but they had no real plan for confrontation. They relied on fear and confusion to get what they wanted. John knew fear alone would not work on him. That afternoon, another letter arrived. The paper was slightly crumpled, as if it had been handled roughly. The message was clear: comply with the HOA rules or face consequences. This time, the letter was more direct, even menacing. John calmly read it, studying every word. He knew this was an attempt to provoke a reaction. The goal was to make him panic or make mistakes. John sat at his desk, reviewing the situation carefully. He would not respond hastily. Instead, he planned a countermeasure. He called it the observation trap. He would create an opportunity to see exactly who these intruders were and what they were capable of without putting Leo in danger. He began by preparing safe zones inside the house. Leo's room was reinforced with extra locks, cameras, and a communication device. He showed Leo how to use it, explaining that it was just another game. "If anyone tries to come into our house, we will know," John said. "And we will stay safe." Next, John set up decoy targets. Some doors were left appearing slightly unsecured, just enough to lure intruders toward them. Hidden cameras recorded every movement. Motion detectors were placed in strategic locations. John's military experience allowed him to think like the enemy, anticipating their approach and weaknesses. That evening, John and Leo went through the house together, practicing quiet movements. They tested doors and windows, checking how quickly they could reach safe zones. Leo was careful and attentive. John felt proud of how quickly his son was learning. The boy's calmness reassured him. Late at night, the first intruders arrived. A group of men approached the house, carrying fake identification. They knocked on the door and called John's name, pretending to be officials. John stayed hidden, observing from a safe position. He noted their numbers, their coordination, and their hesitation. They were confident at first, but soon confusion appeared. They had underestimated their target. John used small distractions to guide the intruders into specific areas. A light flickered in the yard, and a sound echoed from the side of the house. The intruders paused, looking around. They moved cautiously, unaware that every step was being recorded. Meanwhile, Leo remained calm in his room. He whispered updates to his father through the communication device, reporting every sound and movement. John felt relief and pride. The boy trusted him completely, and that trust was powerful. The intruders tried to open the doors, forcing locks that John had reinforced. They made noise, but John stayed patient. He knew that panic would only help them. He watched and waited for the right moment. One of the men attempted to enter through a side window. John had predicted this move. He activated a camera that shone a bright light, startling the intruder. The man stumbled backward, cursing under his breath. John noted the reaction carefully. Each movement gave him more information about their weaknesses. After several minutes, the intruders grew frustrated. They shouted, trying to intimidate the house from outside. John stayed hidden, letting them exhaust themselves. They had no idea that they were being outmaneuvered at every step. Finally, John made a controlled move. Using his training, he approached the intruders from a safe angle, visible but not threatening. His presence alone caused them to hesitate. They were unprepared for someone with experience and confidence. John spoke firmly. "You are not officials," he said. "You are trespassing. Leave now, or authorities will be notified. This neighborhood is protected." The men glanced at each other, unsure. They had expected an easy target, someone intimidated by letters and rules. Instead, they faced a calm, prepared man. John's voice was steady, his posture confident. The intruders realized they had no advantage. One of the men tried to argue, waving papers that looked official. John took the papers and examined them. They were indeed fake, poorly copied and full of errors. John held them up for all to see, showing that the claims were invalid. Seeing their plan fail, the intruders decided to retreat. They hurried back to their vehicles, leaving quickly. John watched them go, recording the license plates and vehicle details. This information would be critical for the authorities. After the men left, John returned to Leo. The boy was calm, proud of his part in the plan. John hugged him tightly. "You did very well," he said. "We stayed safe because we were smart and careful." The next morning, John went through the footage. He had captured clear images of the intruders, their vehicles, and their approach methods. He now had proof of their illegal activities. This was more than just a warning. They had tried to intimidate a family, and he had documented everything. John also visited neighbors to share what had happened. Many were shocked to learn that the fake HOA was attempting direct intimidation. John encouraged them to reinforce their own security and stay vigilant. A sense of community formed as people realized they could protect each other. By the afternoon, John reviewed the situation again. The fake HOA was clever but inexperienced. They relied on fear and paperwork, not skill or strategy. John understood that the next move might be bolder. He needed to stay ahead, anticipate their actions, and keep Leo safe at all costs. That evening, John and Leo spent time together as usual, reading stories and building the model ship. The normal routines were important. They reminded both of them that life was not only about threats and danger, it was about family, trust, and confidence. John's mind remained alert, thinking several steps ahead. The intruders had tested his home, and he had responded with intelligence and calm. The situation had escalated, but he was ready. Each movement, each action was part of a plan to protect his son. As night fell, John checked the perimeter one last time. The street was quiet, but his instincts told him to remain vigilant. The intruders had retreated, but their attempt had only revealed more about their methods. John was prepared for whatever came next. He whispered to himself, "We are ready. No one will take Leo. We are strong and careful. We will face whatever comes." With Leo safe and asleep, John finally allowed himself to rest for a few hours. The first direct confrontation had been managed successfully, but the story was far from over. He knew the next steps would require even more planning, preparation, and courage. John's calm confidence was the shield that protected his son. The fake HOA had made their first real move, and John had turned it into an advantage. They had underestimated him, and they would learn that he was not someone to be threatened. The night was quiet, but John's mind remained alert. He had won this round, but the challenge was not over. The trap had worked, and he now held the knowledge and proof to stop the fake HOA completely. The next morning, John woke early. The night had been quiet, but he did not relax. The previous night's encounter had proven that the fake HOA was bold enough to come near his home. Today, he planned to confront them directly, but carefully. John knew that rushing in recklessly could endanger Leo or the neighbors. Strategy and control were key. He started by reviewing all the surveillance footage. Every angle, every shadow, every movement had been recorded. The intruders' numbers, vehicles, and tactics were all documented. John prepared a clear plan. He would remain in control, expose the intruders, and ensure they could no longer intimidate anyone. John also spoke to Leo calmly. "Leo, today we will see how being smart keeps us safe. Stay in your safe room, watch carefully, and follow instructions. We are ready." Leo nodded, pride in his eyes. He understood that this was part of the challenge, and he trusted his father completely. By late afternoon, John was ready. He positioned cameras and motion detectors, and he reinforced safe zones. Then he left one door slightly unsecured as a lure, a calculated trap for the intruders. John waited quietly, hidden but observing everything clearly. Soon, two men appeared at the edge of the yard. They approached cautiously, carrying papers and trying to act confident. John had expected them. Using his experience, he remained silent and watched how they moved. Each step they took confirmed their lack of planning. They were relying entirely on intimidation and hope. One of the men knocked on the door loudly. "Open up. This is the HOA. You must comply with the rules," he shouted. John stayed calm. He did not answer. The men tried to peer through windows and doors, checking for movement. They did not realize that every moment was being recorded and observed. John then used a distraction. He activated a light in the side yard, and a small noise played from a hidden speaker. The men hesitated, unsure of what was happening. One of them looked around nervously. It was clear they were not trained for such situations. John silently noted their reactions, learning their weaknesses. The men moved closer to the slightly unsecured door. One tried to open it, expecting it to give him control. John had predicted this. He was ready to intervene if necessary, but he wanted to stay calm and measured. At the same time, Leo observed quietly from his room, reporting every sound and movement through the communication device. John spoke clearly from his hidden position. "Stop. You are trespassing. You are not officials. Leave immediately or the authorities will be called." His voice was firm and confident. The intruders froze, surprised by his calm and command. The man holding the papers waved them, trying to assert authority. John calmly examined the papers and held them up for the cameras. They were clearly fake, full of errors, and stamped incorrectly. The intruders had no real power, and John made sure it was evident. The men began to argue among themselves. Frustration and panic showed on their faces. John had anticipated this. He remained hidden, letting their fear grow while ensuring Leo's safety. Their intimidation tactics were failing because John remained calm, in control, and prepared. After several tense minutes, John approached them slowly, visible but non-threatening. His posture and confidence alone unsettled the intruders. They had expected to face a scared family, not someone trained to handle danger. John's calm presence gave him the advantage. "You cannot scare us with fake rules," John said firmly. "Leave now. This neighborhood is protected, and we have proof of your illegal actions." The intruders hesitated. They realized they had underestimated their target. They had come expecting fear and hesitation but found none. One of the men tried to leave, but the other seemed unsure. John's strategy was working. The intruders' lack of coordination and training made them vulnerable. John kept his distance, speaking clearly and observing their movements. Every step they took was recorded, giving him evidence to use later. Finally, the men retreated. They moved quickly toward their vehicles, clearly panicked and frustrated. John watched them go, noting license plates and details for the authorities. He had successfully defended his home, protected Leo, and gained evidence to stop the fake HOA permanently. Once the intruders were gone, John returned to Leo. The boy was calm, proud, and relieved. John hugged him tightly. "You did everything perfectly," he said. "We stayed safe because we were careful and smart. That is how we win." Leo smiled, proud of his part in the plan. The next day, John shared the footage and evidence with the authorities. They were shocked at the boldness of the fake HOA members. With clear proof of trespassing and intimidation, law enforcement assured John that the intruders would be investigated, and their ability to threaten families would be stopped. John also spoke to neighbors, showing them the footage and explaining what had happened. Many were relieved to see that someone had taken action, and some realized the importance of being vigilant. Slowly, the community began to feel safe again. Despite the success, John remained cautious. He reinforced the house again, checked cameras and sensors, and reviewed the plan. The fake HOA had been stopped this time, but John knew vigilance was always necessary. He had turned their intimidation into an opportunity to strengthen security and awareness. That evening, John and Leo returned to their normal routine. They worked on the model ship, read stories, and shared dinner. It was important for Leo to feel normal, safe, and confident. John knew that courage was not only about facing threats but also about maintaining calm and trust in everyday life. Before bed, John reviewed the plan one last time. He checked all safe zones, cameras, and communication devices. Everything was ready if the HOA tried to act again. He whispered to himself, "We are ready for anything. We are strong, careful, and prepared." As he tucked Leo into bed, John felt a sense of relief. The confrontation had ended successfully. The fake HOA had been exposed and forced to retreat. But John also knew this was not the end of challenges. He had to remain vigilant, watchful, and ready to protect his family. Outside, the neighborhood was calm under the moonlight. John knew that peace came from preparation and awareness, not fear. He had turned a threat into a lesson for himself, Leo, and the community. The fake HOA had been bold, but they had underestimated him. John finally allowed himself a moment of rest. Leo slept soundly, unaware of the careful planning and courage that had kept him safe. John's heart was calm. He had protected his son, exposed the intruders, and restored some peace to the neighborhood. This confrontation had proved one thing: courage, preparation, and intelligence could overcome intimidation and fear. John knew that whatever the future held, he and Leo would face it together, prepared, strong, and confident. The sun rose slowly over the quiet neighborhood, bathing the streets in golden light. John woke early, as he always did, but today there was a sense of relief in the air. The previous confrontations with the fake HOA members had ended successfully. The intruders had retreated, their plans exposed, and the authorities were now involved. John knew the threat was not entirely gone, but it was finally manageable. After breakfast, John sat at his desk, reviewing all the footage and documents. The evidence of the HOA's illegal activities was clear. The authorities had promised swift action, and John felt confident that the individuals responsible would face the consequences. The safety of his family and the neighborhood was now a shared priority. Leo joined him, carrying a small box of paints for the model ship. "Dad, can we finish the sales today?" he asked with a bright smile. John smiled back. Despite the tension of recent days, Leo remained cheerful and trusting. His calmness reminded John why he had fought so hard to protect him. "Of course, Leo," John replied. "We will finish it together. Our ship will be strong and ready for any storm." The day passed quietly. John worked alongside Leo on the ship, giving careful guidance and encouraging him at every step. The simple act of painting tiny sails and assembling miniature masts brought a sense of normalcy and peace that both of them desperately needed. John watched Leo closely, noticing how the boy's confidence had grown. Leo had learned the importance of calmness, observation, and trust without being burdened by fear. Later, John walked through the neighborhood, stopping to speak with neighbors. Many had seen the footage or heard about the confrontations. They expressed gratitude and relief. Families shared their stories, some of them inspired by John's careful and brave actions. Slowly, the neighborhood began to feel united against any future threats. John encouraged them to remain vigilant but also to enjoy life without fear. In the afternoon, the authorities arrived to follow up on the case. John provided all the evidence, explained the timeline, and detailed the intruders' tactics. Officers were impressed by John's preparedness and attention to detail. They assured him that the fake HOA would be fully investigated and that legal measures would be taken to prevent future intimidation. With the legal side addressed, John returned home to focus on Leo. They went outside to the small garden, planting flowers and trimming bushes. Leo laughed as petals fell on his hands, and John joined in the fun. The simple act of gardening, working together, and sharing smiles was a reminder that life continued beyond fear and threats. As evening approached, John prepared a special dinner for Leo. They sat together, enjoying the meal and talking about their day. Leo shared stories about school, friends, and the adventures of their model ship. John listened carefully, proud of the boy's energy and spirit. The bond between them had grown stronger through the challenges they had faced. After dinner, John and Leo went for a short walk around the block. The neighborhood was calm and peaceful, but John remained alert, his experience keeping him watchful. He noticed neighbors chatting, children playing, and families enjoying the evening. For the first time in days, John allowed himself a small sense of contentment. The fake HOA had been exposed, and the neighborhood felt safer. When they returned home, John tucked Leo into bed. The boy's eyes sparkled with trust and happiness. "Dad, will everything be okay now?" Leo asked quietly. "Yes, Leo," John replied softly. "We have handled the danger. You are safe. We are safe. And we will stay prepared, just in case, but we can enjoy our lives without fear." Leo smiled and closed his eyes, feeling secure in his father's care. John watched him sleep for a few moments, his heart full of gratitude and pride. Protecting Leo had been his priority, and he had succeeded without compromising the boy's innocence or confidence. After ensuring Leo was safe, John returned to his office. He reviewed the neighborhood once more, checking the cameras and communication devices. Everything was quiet. The immediate threat had passed, and the fake HOA's attempts to intimidate the community had failed. John knew vigilance would always be necessary, but he also knew the balance between preparation and peace. In the following days, the authorities took action against the fake HOA members. Notices were issued, and legal steps were enforced to prevent further intimidation. The neighborhood breathed a collective sigh of relief, and John's careful documentation had been critical to this outcome. John also took time to speak with the neighbors, sharing lessons about preparedness and community support. Families reinforced their own safety measures, creating a network of vigilance and care. John's leadership had not only protected his son but had also strengthened the neighborhood's resilience. One afternoon, John and Leo sat together on the porch, watching the sunset. The sky glowed in shades of orange and pink. Leo leaned against his father, feeling safe and loved. "Dad, I am proud of us," Leo said quietly. John smiled, hugging him gently. "I am proud of you too, Leo. You were brave and smart. Remember, being prepared and calm is how we stay safe. And we always protect the people we love." As the sun disappeared behind the horizon, John reflected on the events of the past week. The fake HOA had tried to threaten him and his son, but careful planning, intelligence, and courage had turned the situation around. The neighborhood was safer, Leo was protected, and John had proven that preparation and calm action could overcome intimidation. That night, John and Leo went to bed knowing they were safe. The home felt peaceful, filled with the warmth of trust and love. John knew that challenges could come again in life, but he was ready. With careful planning, awareness, and courage, any danger could be met and handled. The next morning, life continued normally. Neighbors greeted each other with smiles, children played in the yards, and the sense of community had grown stronger. John felt proud to have been a part of that change, knowing that the neighborhood was no longer a place of fear. John and Leo spent the day finishing the model ship. They worked together, laughing and enjoying each other's company. The ship, once a simple project, had become a symbol of their strength, patience, and teamwork. It reminded them that even in difficult times, careful planning and trust in each other could create success and safety. As evening came, John looked out at the neighborhood. Peace had returned. Families were safe, the fake HOA could no longer threaten them, and the community had learned the importance of vigilance and unity. John felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing that his skills, experience, and careful planning had made a real difference. He turned to Leo, who was proudly holding the finished model ship. "We did it, Leo," John said. "We are safe, and we are ready for anything, but now we can enjoy our lives too." Leo smiled brightly, hugging the ship and his father. "I knew we could, Dad. We are strong together." John hugged him back, feeling the warmth of the moment. The challenges were behind them, and a new chapter of safety, peace, and family began. John realized that courage was not just about facing danger, but also about protecting loved ones and creating a life where they could thrive. The fake HOA had failed, but the lessons remained. Awareness, preparation, calm action, and trust had turned fear into strength. John and Leo had faced danger together and come out stronger, their bond unbreakable. As night fell, the neighborhood was quiet and peaceful. John knew that life would continue with normal challenges, but he was ready. With Leo by his side, a secure home, and a vigilant community, there was no obstacle they could not face. Peace was restored, and safety was theirs to keep. John whispered quietly to himself, "We are ready for anything, and we will always protect each other." He finally allowed himself to rest, confident that the past threats were behind them and that the future would be bright.